Horsige le Juruchid Kailende. Alle. Het lorok ik deinig kwam groen de mare zo gewoon tour.
That was the first time they had an idea there was a huge field out there.
Ik is gaan doen aan een operaanje waar het kluwe gosne gehoven tjierskach wegen behe het aardige gebraag.
Weet je hoe aardig uit in de Baile?
Aan een bedrippende zoel bij operaanje grieguur naar Wild West naar Yorpa.
There are men working in these rigs who have battled with desert heat who will tell you that they've never come across anything quite to compare with the persistent malevolence of the North Sea at its worst.
It was like a brave new world.
I remember the excitement of everybody being involved in a new city.
We had an American burger bar, radars in town.
We gaan je gewoon op een doe je op een van.
Dan heb ik het toemigstjag.
Here in Aberdeen, there's a new sense of excitement.
That seemed to be licensed to print money.
Ach, va operaanje skarrig, maar hoier snacht.
If you work in the oil, you're laughing. You can have what you want. But if you don't, you've had it.
If you're in a deprived area and there's a lot of wealth around, you're bottom of the pile.
As both happy estate agents and less happy mortgage hunters know, property prices go as high as in London.
People who spout this view about oil in Aberdeen and say, oh yeah, Aberdeen, lots of money, go to Aberdeen, you'll be absolutely loaded. Not if you're in Aberdeen.
Ze seo scial me Valamór agus an ceall dail na heice dí gníomhachas.
Aberdeen is now internationally recognised as the most important oil centre in the world.
Edisha, Tronaboyan.
I remember I was actually there, Queen Elizabeth pushing a symbolic gold-plated button in BP's control centre.
Tronambroan.
How I came out of it, I have no idea.
Tro Aharichen Suchulta.
The real name of Aberdeen is Aberdeen.
Agus an doel aan heb ik op Rijn, met de cushion het tjondag sharaf.
Price of oil throughout the world is
market
plummeting.
overnight, the cost of a barrel of crude fell to less than $10.
What has happened to Aberdeen?
Charwachtidoch making gaan het jachas reis, agus sin Castlesola.
There's no lasting memory that we had oil in the city here. Nothing at all.
Clachgranje. Is an chorid kiad blianna waar is sneeuw we glach groeisjo waar chuari rubuslo, gidachid immel de valle. Is in de goeie chuari am een nulkie giag, schachket ze hun. Ach, a gile begniavachis die echkin ans ne tukkelichen het viergewalle. She had torsten farrenam ga balle op Rijn aan de gillen jarhoe na halappe. In Granite City.
In 1959 or thereabouts, when I would have been about 11 years old, my parents and my sister and I had a bit of a holiday. We arrived in Aberdeen and walked up to Union Street. It was a beautiful day in the summer. The sun was shining. The buildings were all sparkling, the granite buildings. And I thought, this is just great. This is nothing like Glasgow. The beach was a big attraction. Now, there are not all that many days when it's all that pleasant to go swimming in the North Sea, but we certainly did that in the summer, needless to say. And the beach would be absolutely packed with people.
I was born and brought up here. Yeah, it was my home city. I cannot be unkind about my home city.
Silver City with the Golden Sands. There was a poster. I think it was in the 1950s.
People from Aberdeen used to say that the city, although it's the third city in Scotland, they used to say it was like a big village mentality. And that was true then. People did seem to know each other, or you knew somebody from a family and an extended family. It was amazing how people got to know each other.
So Gleivig we misschien kun je doen in een als een Baile heen een huis. Zo gaat er groot vastgers de betogen genaamd, maar ik als het toe is een sasje doen je dat je mag wil dat doen we zo goed. Als het doet maar dat is toch gaan meer.
Siamai gniafach ysile a hyddefich ronach lach grania, leid tuhanachus agus múlian pepad. Ach ans na siskatan va ungniafachus va hosioch I de chor. En giaskach.
Whatever may be the claims of other industries, Aberdeen's basis for prosperity, its very reason for living, is fish.
As me growing up in the 1960s, Aberdeen was a bustling fishing. It was the premier port, employing many thousands of people, trawlermen. But it wasn't just the fishermen and the fish trade. It was all the supporting jobs, the engineers, the painters, the box makers, ice. It was just a thriving industry, and we were keeping millions of people fed across Europe. You are the last of the hunters. There is no question about that. We are one of the last remaining people who go out there and pit your skill and your experience against that of Mother Nature. And I can assure you, Mother Nature is much bigger, much stronger than ever we think we are.
Ach va shalakadille chinne fade aan se gewoon die te operaai.
This has been a common sight in the North Sea. Seismographic survey vessels dropping explosive charges. One charge every 1/8 of a mile. 500 charges a day to probe the nature of the seabed below. Slowly, scientists have built up a picture of the geological strata under the waves that may lead them to the discovery of vast deposits of oil or natural gas.
I remember being in the Shell building, which was the old tram shed, talking to the assistant manager, when suddenly there was a lot of excitement and commotion and I was asked to leave. I didn't know this then. It turned out they just received some core samples back from what became the Brentfield. That was the first time they had any idea there was a huge field out there.
Get de hyddefich operain leis in giaskach charon roiach gynichtje y sydafachig ans na siachgadan. Va mi rian am yn gniafach y symasiniach is va steingle cwach gyda ffyrgen tyhol y tos bwy y chwledigna.
Well, the 1970s were a pretty awful time, and you know, people talk about 3-day weeks and power cuts and whatnot.
Yn dwylun ie ola y faedd starsich operain yn ffwysglyg y fa i idd yn roiach. Haroiniach sy'n byd ola a haroiniach sy'n naroiniach cwnnwstach sio. Ach yd sga'n stein gans yn roi'n dyhol, biach yn gorm y gael.
I must say I was cynical to begin with. I had no idea. I'd never been involved in oil and gas. I had no idea what it might bring.
Anyone who doubts the potential practical impact of oil should realise that already, before a single drop is ashore, there is at least one corner of crisis Britain where it's Scotland the brave, new world.
Haro aatje gefrikkerig die operain kus een brahagal in de charm loog voor show.
This is one of the most exciting things that's happened to Europe for centuries.
Ach jemer lesige inlichtig kutjach kus aan een nolle a haring keer hier trei van een gewone toer.
That was pioneering in the North Sea. There wasn't a lot of offshore exploration at that time, so they were pioneering.
As a head run Elizabeth Gorstich Company all the British Petroleum Kihid Claren Starling, waar de kosk liechit mullen noord en ver. Waar 3 uur gegaarst en gloch genamal Big Ben. Is geen Claren en Tarren in Gliech door run aan zijn gewone tour dus een kanner en 40s field.
The platforms will have to be tipped upright and piled deep into the seabed, secure enough to withstand 90-foot waves and 100-mile-an-hour gales.
When they took the first jacket out to sink it on the ground, and the TV cameras were there, and I was looking at the kind of 2 or 3 people I knew in BP. Every single one of them had their fingers crossed, because they weren't sure what would happen. It was new, really new technology.
Roger, all vessels are clear. Okay, we ready? Roger. Okay, you ready? Roger. Okay, here we go. We have crash lap now.
Ga je hier immer steegi gemaakt, ach ga bal op rein, wat doel aan. Har een skillen waar je zo'n hoprach schaden voeting aan zijn skieder. Sen han ik fydd ac ach carnig en tuchel na'n droven kan een jaar hoe alappe.
They're bringing in the special skills of the oil business, of men with curious knowledge like the mud engineers, and of underwater construction.
It was the beginning. It was kind of amateurish, and we love it, to be honest. I first arrived in Scotland, and it was snowing. And I said to myself, oh hell, I'm not coming back. And more than 50 years or 47 years later, I'm still here.
Waar David en Jet amach is aan een lopen wat die jane with groen mare. Is kleer hiek, we gaat de koppen aan de 4 grochietje het bare gooien. Wij vatten is een drooi anichtje, maar eentje het triachkenis konderstige zijn teugel. Is wij bulloch konderstig et groene mare.
This was the beginning of diving in the North Sea, so we were doing what called bounce dive.
Waar bounce diving, ik heel goed geneemd al van Luske in mijn toerus, is een unieguddig, dus kaske goede ne bend. Staat konderstig redide we gaan een garp. We zijn tachers, maar jachig 4 geinach is on crash roll.
The water at 300 feet is cold, so there was one of the men shocked when you were going out of the barrel. And the umbilical was shortish because it was just coming from the inside of the barrel to the job.
Hapering aan het diven en heb je al voor, ach me ik het minute, maar ze me gaat chillen gaan wondag, dus fascigaal. As je gaat cheers bij de eerst.
Came back to the surface and being decompressed in was a rapid time, which was not very good for your bone, for your band. In my particular case, I lost all my back teeth.
I acted, sadly, for a number of drivers who suffer from decompression sickness. Horrific to see the deterioration on them because they're a special breed of men, mainly men, and they took what I thought were tremendous risks. They were well paid, but I would not have ventured into their position for 10 times that salary.
Agus Chael Cooch and Beha.
Hello again. There's been another tragedy on a North Sea oil rig. 2 divers have died, bringing the number of deaths among divers in the North Sea to 24 in the past 2 years. There are now about 1,000 divers working in often atrocious weather conditions on the drilling rigs. The pay is high, up to £15,000 a year, but so are the hazards.
As I said, it was the beginning, and we never knew otherwise, so we more or less accepted.
Da'n dwych gysorit iawn ag yn roiolus camera yn lola a harin. Yn ysyn y fain, ach fan teregyd ach gygwtiach.
A whole new world has come to the northeast and Scotland, mainly Americans. They come through on their way to the offshore rigs. At £1 million a hole, you don't waste time. BEA has put in the new helicopter terminal at Aberdeen, from which the oil engineers go out to the rigs.
You know, I remember the excitement of everybody being involved in a new city. The oilmen were, you know, the explorers of the North Sea. Without the American and Canadian men, the roustabouts as we call them, this would never have happened.
On the first leg that we have here, from this point right here.
Although Britain has its own great oil companies, there isn't a tradition of expertise on the drilling side. Now the oil is on our own back door, can Britain learn the skills in time and benefit from the opportunities it will generate? The engineering skills are there, but they need to be organised.
For me, realisation of the opportunities came about in the first Offshore Europe exhibition.
Sé Offshore Europe yn yn y tasbani yn y smóid y hegniolus olas yn dyrhol, a gael gach darnach y bliana an lobrain. Ach an an yncyr diag siachgyd sy tri be toshach I simply van for chanavas.
I can only describe them as tents, of which we had a tent, which was called John Wood Group Oil Services. My dad had never been involved in oil and gas at all, so we went along. I walked around it with my dad. He was slightly mind blown. We stopped at the stand, and he looks all around it. Actually, it wasn't much bigger than this room. And he said, "How much did this cost?" And I probably shouldn't have told him what I did. Honestly, I've never forgotten this. I mean, my dad didn't interfere in business in my stuff at all. He just let me get on with it. But he looked me in the eye and he said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And of course, I wasn't really sure what I was doing.
And we were there for all the freebies. And then we'd taken the bus out to the Bridge of Dawn, and we got posters and pens and whatever. And it was a different world.
Lots of hospitality. Everybody, there just seemed to be drunk men wandering about, and all the waitresses, you know, got chatted up. There were ice sculptures. There just seemed to be so many lavish things going on, and everybody came to be quite excited about what became known as Oil Week in Aberdeen.
The Americans were there without a doubt. You know, you had names like Buddy Beauregard, just fantastic. W.G. Weatherford.
Helicopters take off for the North Sea oil rig. Black gold is much in evidence at the docks of Europe's offshore capital.
Jagan Kojak en klassieke animal telly savalas van de schachgeten en saas, de kugu in een filmshow Manavale.
So long, Aberdeen, and here's looking at you.
In route nach ronna ha middag en h-Olach, session ha garaf ze ha in gewone tour.
There are men working in these rigs who have battled with desert heat, with typhoons, with the unbelievable cold of Alaska's North Slope, who will tell you that they've never come across anything quite to compare with the persistent malevolence of the North Sea at its worst.
It's the most unpredictable stretch of water I've ever had anything to do with.
We've been on location 65 days, and I've only been able to drill 51 hours. We've had winds every day up to 60 knots. You have to hang on to these handrails, be very careful where you walk. You could be washed right over the side or blown right over the side. I don't think that a stampeded cattle could do you near as much damage as you can get done to you right here.
Most of the oil in America, of course, is on land. And the people who understood about the North Sea, and it's one of the most hostile environments in the world, they were the fishermen. They understood it because they worked in it and lived in it every day.
Bij traladen wat tors teich dan de Criniola en Toshach, le iesgeden alapanach stuwd.
That thing jumps around there like a cork. Yet, in all the weather we've encountered, that little standby boat has never left us.
Va nimmer skulleer lan hunners is me hinge. An an keertjeag schachket se koik, ga ne keer Criniola en steege, is ga piep vat keer is kookmiele a gatch, a hokal a vid a genolle gechied. An Amerika den ma Jew van 9 billion nog te de husk, is har a skillin roer I de hushing haast. Ach, va a harige gechied.
In Britain, there's much talk about what life is going to be like after the oil comes on stream. Most people see our North Sea oil as our one chance of national salvation. The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the light at the end of the tunnel.
In Aberdeen, they're now erecting the biggest tent in Europe. 1,000 very important people will be arriving to celebrate in the Granite City. The Queen will press a ceremonial button in BP's computerized control room.
40 Charlie, BP Peter ahead, dear aid.
And from the largest field beneath the North Sea, the oil will start to flow to the refinery. Or, in the language of the industry, the crude will come on stream.
40 Charlie, BP Peter ahead, dear aid.
Shem tres lodge and having an an keertjeag schachket se koik aan.
And now, here is the Queen and the Royal Party in the Operations Centre with those monitor screens.
I remember I was actually there, Queen Elizabeth pushing a symbolic gold-plated button in BP's control centre.
Bi een puchtan a foslu sre gevalvichen. Is korid och kvichit miele falav, a molle toshach gestruwe.
Well, now that that system has been officially activated, we're waiting here at Grangemouth for the first of the 40s oil to come on stream here, which should be any second now. And there indeed it is. There is the first of that oil.
Our debt to all involved in this project is great, as is the benefit which their tireless efforts are bringing to our country. The job was done by their brains, their skills, their labour and their courage.
This is how it all begins, the stuff that's made Britain the toast of the oil world.
Is a nesh va operain a cosnu clue.
As the rest of the country continues to stagnate and gloom and doom become the order of the day, here in Aberdeen there's a new sense of excitement, of urgency, prosperity, even of hope for the future. Over 260 companies have come into the northeast of Scotland since oil was discovered in the North Sea, and around 300 local companies have taken advantage of the massive amount of money to be made out of North Sea oil.
Everything was big to me coming from White Hills. You know, Banff was big. It was all relative, but it was busy. You could tell that. And the high street itself, lots of people, lots of big department stores, lots of folk going about.
The oil world moves fast and ruthlessly, but like a good boxer riding the punch, Aberdeen is taking the boom in its stride.
We've had to move, as it were, both locally and nationally, from first to fourth gear, almost overnight.
Aberdeen's airport is the runway and Nissan Hut at Dice. In 4 years, the number of passengers has gone up by 600%, mainly oil executives and their families from all over the world who've transformed the granite fishing port into a cosmopolitan city.
I've spoken in Wall Street, I've spoken in New York, I've spoken in Paris, and I know that Aberdeen is now internationally recognized as the most important oil centre in the world.
Once people got to recognize that the Americans were here for a considerable period, they started embracing some of the stuff that they did.
I was a student in the early stages, so I was at RGIT, and I think really simple things like what was different, we had an American burger bar, radars in town.
Radars was the first American hamburger joint, and then all of a sudden, wow, look at this.
Toch dras die de moeie basse bij gewoon toe in Conrad en ik doe je naar Rowell of gaan je gewoon op een doe je paraan van.
If you're a restaurateur, it was tremendous because suddenly there were people with gold Amex cards and what we used to call the 2 martini lunch.
We had 2 American stores open up. The stores were filled with marshmallow, cakes with a special frosting, all sorts of Kellogg products and always sugary. Yeah, this was part of the American community.
I didn't see you standing there.
Ik was nooit aan bakje met de school medical.
I started the American school with 16 children, and by the time I left at the end of 4 years, I had 400 children with a turnover within the year 800.
My mum and dad had a hotel, the Crescent Hotel in Bonaccord Crescent. I just remember everybody talking about oil and gas, everybody having lots of money, quite a lot of Americans being in town.
You would go down Union Street and you would see, without fail, half a dozen cowboys.
They're called the Tory Texans by some of us who are not oily Aberdonians.
I did see a few. The late Harold Bell, who had the Bell's Hotel, he sported a Stetson to everyone's amusement.
We just seemed to accept that suddenly there was this industry on our doorstep. It seemed to be, in my younger eyes, a license to print money.
Ach an táisteach de bheasta seo seachad gon ada, agus gabh muintear an máte bra I the chorb.
It was like a brave new world, and we picked up, I think we picked up quite quickly that there were opportunities there to get work.
Chonnig in het in fálam seo cuiteach mar Institute Technology Robert Gordon a hanes na olhai Robert Gordon. Gairichat an cúit chúrsaichin gus féimlachcan an tuhalúr seo a cholanau.
And all of a sudden, they were doing offshore engineering. And what the Blue Blazes offshore engineering was, you know, nobody knew.
The survival school teaches pilots and oilmen how to get out of a ditching helicopter.
Ach, waar de kieusache, agus a kudish, go loa, de kruachu heknjolasen gus taich gehorsk an hemmerschen ure.
One of my lecturers there was the guy that designed the Hewitt, the helicopter underwater escape trainer. And to this day I can still remember this model with an action man in it that used to go around in a basin.
Habate gus an rockguljórile a varach in hamidicanich a cupwith in a creinjola.
Lots of people at that time that I knew who maybe been tradesmen, who then went to work offshore on obviously a lot more money. So suddenly there were people earning a lot more money than usually in Aberdeen. It didn't matter what night of the week you went out, everywhere was busy. And I remember that was the first time I heard about, you know, a derrick man or an offshore installation manager, who apparently offshore at that time was God. Also, you know, jobs like tool pushers.
You would hear all the time that people were going to work, as they would say in Aberdeen, he's in the aisle.
We moved into a brand new house, which was quite exciting, on a brand new estate. All families new and together, you know, working in this new industry.
Ans na hochgeten big helicopter a fallava op Rijn a chulle 3 minuten. Is al nog kopperige horskutje voor rondje nolle, zo gewoon het doen. Ba which is more you go with this shift the shinkaner da yach ganyed, da yach ganye.
I went offshore on a drilling rig called the Baile Cat, and on a personal basis, I'm going to use the word terrifying. All of a sudden, you're shoved into a cabin with 3 complete strangers. First time ever offshore. Do you admit to anyone that it's your first time offshore? Of course you don't. Did you have any survival training? No, you didn't. Did you know your way around the rig? No, you didn't. Did you know your way to the mess to get food? No, you didn't. But you don't admit any of that. And I was on there for a few days, and I loved it.
Took him fearus alle boei in dui. Agus va chulletine, but nog uiach program in television could call one pop, is on a mar farstje.
We've been sampling today the delights of this man-made miracle, a land of modern make-believe.
Harold Clockage Salvachach the Eichkin the Hein Bucks Fizz at the Russell Harty Show, some program Galeer Gachrulig in h-Ola and 40s Bravo.
It was exciting, the pace that it went at. That's what really got into me, and I loved it.
Is on a hier door, hier chilligen het vjegen roeiachgunigje, kudusje kolach, wie het h-Ola.
These control panels tell you absolutely everything about the platform.
They give us indications of what is happening out in the plant. Like the alarm there, a man is welding.
So that's the flame?
That's the flame alarm.
And the most important thing is this thing here, isn't it?
Yes.
That there.
This tells us how much oil we're actually pumping.
Why are you called tigers?
You mean North Sea tigers?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a nickname. I think most of them are North Sea pussycats.
First time I've been on an oil rig, recently, and it's the first time I've worked with an audience who are getting more money than what I am.
Those Scotch savoury mints.
Yeah.
Good. A mealy Jimmy.
A what?
Mealy Jimmy.
What does it mean?
That's the legs off a haggis.
Badunje is een biolachge lichen television show. Agus chabaman een greevige savanje waren. Wonig club bal kosje op Rijn, koepe, wonigen, koepen in horpe. Am een keer tjeek, ochget ze drie. In een stuurder le fetchen een manager is eenmaal aardiviaan. Sir Alec Ferguson.
Oh, I knew it'd be less, the big one, big party, but I'm proud of the support I went there was unbelievable.
The feel-good factor was absolutely tangible in the city. I remember being allowed out of school early to watch the parade down Union Street.
Colosam go madig na Leichen Galwa. Na de hannig na hochgeden war operaine bonige farbisch glúteach Britain in bloem gaat tricht, skan roachged in een reeltje aardige. Ach, er garai en rosen Markenburg aan zijn gulaatje ze wellen.
Of ik ging kro, nog wat doerzag maar wel, wat jeeskig maar wel. Het is verschillende kahar. Het is van de paard ging bij jeeskig zo'n vrienden torken. Tullig an fádraig na stocha tullig ag cúpar na hóla.
The fishing industry in Aberdeen, perhaps not surprisingly, feels a growing resentment that oil, the brawling, glamorous newcomer, has pushed to the front of the queue in the struggle for shore-based facilities.
The supporting services, the engineers, the skilled engineers were obviously paid more money to go and be engineers with oil and gas companies who could afford to pay huge salaries. And I don't blame people. People hunt the golden bounty.
Agus chapetjidach na hiascadan a bheith an puchta gemach.
I had this job in the university and we were looking to buy a house. and that was extremely difficult at that time, to the point of being almost ludicrous on occasion, because you rushed to buy the Present Journal on a Tuesday and a Friday when they advertised property. And there would be a house that you kind of fancied, and you went round in the evening, and in one or two cases you were literally in a queue. And then the house would sell the next day for double the asking price. Needless to say, not to us.
The influx of well-paid oil executives has produced a major headache. House prices have gone up 150% in the last 5 years. Young married couples in Aberdeen find it difficult to compete in this kind of market.
I must have put in 20, 30 bids at a time when you paid for a surveyor's report every time, but you were always falling short.
As both happy estate agents and less happy mortgage hunters know, property prices go as high as in London.
Har roi fatte gus an rob baljan ure fas sans na skíðanid imol a Baile, leid Bridge of Don agus West Hill.
Lys fat a tóra te hen múr go dúgar an hen núr an sent fydr múr na hóla fúda.
3,000 to 4,000 pounds, that was the very first ones. And now they're going up as far as 100,000 if you want them. And not so well built as the first ones, I don't think, either.
A cháisich yn scarig edrych yn yw'n fa yn sas y gniafachus agus yn yw'n nach ro y dol maid.
When I came to Aberdeen, it was fairly typical of the 70s that people who had been to university or college tended to earn more, the white-collar people. Tradesmen, even skilled tradesmen such as plumbers, electricians and so on, earned less. But suddenly there was this tremendous demand for people of a skilled trade to go and work offshore. There was a great swing, so suddenly you might think, well, I'm a teacher, I should be earning a certain amount, and my next door neighbour is a plumber, and he's earning twice that. And it was a complete swing in the demographics of the city.
One of the things we noticed was prices rising and it becoming very costly for local people. And you couldn't get things like electricians and plumbers because they were all sucked up by the oil industry. Although there was wealth brought to Aberdeen, it was in the hands of a few, and most Aberdonians didn't feel the effects of the oil in a good way. It was always, everything was more expensive for them. And where you have areas of deprivation, of course, if you're in a deprived area and there's a lot of wealth around, you're bottom of the pile, absolutely.
If you work in the oil, you're laughing. You can have what you want. But if you don't, you've had it. If they work in the oil, they're really big-headed. You know, they think they can buy anything. You know, they've got big mouths, you know. And they look down on us.
It was very much a tale of two cities. That was very apparent from an early age, that there were swathes of this city that really didn't share the glow of the oil and gas and the money that went with that. Those were often the areas that I would find myself in policing, day in, day out.
If you looked at the average wage in Aberdeen, it was about 200 to 300 pounds above what the average wage was in the rest of the country. But that was only because there were some huge payments being made to people from mainly Americans that didn't trickle down to the ordinary people.
And people who spout this view about oil in Aberdeen and say, oh yeah, Aberdeen, lots of money, go to Aberdeen, you'll be absolutely loaded. Not if you're an Aberdonian, you won't.
I feel as if we're just being used, you know, the city's being used.
Agus chapetjidach muinje de naatje, we fadachking nach ro iatsen, e fein buamach.
Aberdeen is the lifeline of Britain. It is the city that earns all the revenue for the country, operates through that city, and we haven't even got a dual carriageway linking it to the rest of the country.
It was just a question of, we've got oil, turn on the taps, and that's it. And it makes money.
Ach ban like na company in all the hain, a van guach.
Big oil companies then were called the Seven Sisters. So these were by far the most powerful corporations on earth. We were inclined to say, we're really, really pleased that you're here. What can we do to help you?
Hara a chullahaatje Gaelic Udish nevachas san dói. Da hiet gele míle tua ed O'Brien ha Shelton. An an kia jiag shachget sa kehed vak nevachas an nolla a giri terminal a hokal gus an nolla a vas a termig a nyer is Shelton a horst guchi.
North of Lerwick, the capital, lies the inlet of Sullom Voe, where oil men want to build a terminal for 3 pipelines, tank storage farms and a tanker berth.
In the Shetlands, they were much stronger and much more community-minded.
Their coordinating plan was to introduce a bill in the Commons giving the local council wide powers over oil development around Shetland, and they fought it through.
It gives Shetland County Council power and authority to make financial arrangements with companies who wish to take part in this development, giving the County Council control over these companies.
If you want to set up here, it's going to cost you. And you're going to have to pay for things because we don't have the money up here.
The Shetlanders seem to have the attitude not, aren't we pleased to see you? What can we do to help you? But rather the other way around. They would say, in effect, you need us. What are you going to do to help us? And so they got, uniquely in the UK, the Shetland Oil Fund.
Goskil Sullom Voe an an kia jiag hochget sa hern. Agus mar van nolla a sruhig isteach va sporran an heltain iljönig kujach. Ga je vein alle seo chlachgus an guddes an spores, lior landen, agus gilior ille a hokal. Jeg dunje kurmach jeg an kaar. En ju halloch korith kehed hied mulja noot, aan zijn nurre sonretje show.
The Shetlanders had something to show for it all, in the way of permanent benefit. There was no equivalent of that anywhere else.
Getava Creiniola sa keelge nach roin jak na company in Mora ach nolla horsker Shelton, habe O'Brien in ne roin wachke. As soon as him falche griel, is nog een be in denem pria valle alle in de golka Dunjay, Monrosh, Noyagan and Castelnoy.
I think that our isolation played a large part in that. I think also the fact that we were naive enough to begin with to think that we could do it.
So do you think that you've beaten the oil companies in any way?
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. It would be a brave man who thought that he could beat the oil companies.
Ach waren gneuvige seo, is een goede piastje zich ruige, een krochige unrute wijn. Pries baar over.
Tis nolle, ek tisch mian.
sláint nutinius, chula gníomhachas illa ha tarchachat sharavash, the gois a me, can you van sharavash gedírach, the gníomhachas nála, ach, tehen bees, tehen osta, tehen change.
You could treat yourself to an Apple Macintosh with a massive 1 megabyte of computer memory, sophisticated graphics, and something called a mouse.
A chalama cia dia cochgad sa shia hannig criana cunavalacha prísinola is gas gan dro cús is strúha gesteach van nervianach, agus chrúhig seo stein.
Oil has become the most volatile commodity of 1986. The price touched rock bottom on Easter Monday, dipping beneath $10 a barrel. Across the world, depressed prices have forced oil companies to cut exploration projects, and already the North Sea industry is suffering company collapses and redundancies.
And these men know that hundreds of millions of pounds have disappeared from the North Sea at a stroke.
It was frightening at the time, I remember trying to work out how we were going to adjust our business plans when we just spent a lot of money investing and growing.
There's no way we can stick our head in the ground as if nothing's happening. There's a very severe downturn in the market.
Da triplet yn môrig, gniolchos yn ola, a sy'n y ciolach ac ar y môr yn company yn fac yma cwtrmoch ag Aberdeen, agos gyda'r galapa, agos gana fanc ac yn either sy'n fat on the ffydd roch stein.
Today there are 106 rigs like these in the North Sea. 22 of them have got absolutely nothing to do.
I don't think back in the 80s there was the slightest nod towards the consequences of some of the decisions that were made. We just reduce your head count, get rid of people, sack people. And it was, sack.
My pass was handed in, cut in two, and just escorted out the building.
Chael Moran, and Driach and Chael Kuch, Chael at Mjoland.
In the earlier days, many engineers and people in the oil industry were paid basically rock star wages.
But some people might say, well, they've done jolly well over the past few years. They've been earning up to £45,000 a year. You know, they had it good.
Well, that's very true, but those people still have hardship when you have no work and no income.
I think there was a recognition that people had gone too far, gone too fast.
Rhaid seo cronw afysach y pris yn hehen, maraki y fai gyn nwydd chosedd y fachol.
I'm assuming who I can now much mas keenly come back or a figure down like your mortgages for agus an ocean hannig me go crash show hide it on up it agus when the mortgage companies the bank in the state to lo de I think come to the gar for you ek or kill hawks so you go sugo faskulte don't but so blion hier gar ek het go ko biaun agus no hannig show gar hannig temperatura tinne dis
Agus gad ich a fwy go láidir I fiag economy o Baile.
Onshore, all the spin-off generated by high-spending oilmen is down.
Where have all the people gone?
They're all here, but they don't have money any longer to spend on entertainment.
What I do remember was the car sticker signs. Please let us have another oil boom. We won't this one away. We won't waste this one, shall we say.
You believe in a recovery of oil prices?
Absolutely.
And recovery of your business?
Absolutely, yes. Entertainment's here to stay.
Yn Gelnúne hannig pisach eith pris yn ola. Yn esgata I mag op Baile fi súchbeltje leis a fries ha cúchleitach.
At $18 a barrel, it's still only half the price it once was, but at least it's stable. They've gone back to drilling out beyond the horizon, but they've learnt a new caution.
There are those at offshore Europe trying their hand at pulling rabbits out of hats of a sort, while others are relying on different species to sell their wares and giant toys to catch the eyes of thousands of overseas buyers. Elsewhere, there are painted platforms and ships upon painted oceans, and everywhere a mood of optimism.
Waar moran, ik kan je eens bij jou zich lessen, wonen grienig moran, han ik aan meer nog dan. Han je tjeke wat moran, hoe dat nog ook het een laan, die is wat alle das gaan schaal gooien, han je tjeke eens bij zijn.
Ach, ans na hochgatan hannig a chunners de ha an loibe gneadachis am follish go brúdjal.
I can remember my parents, they hadn't appreciated just, and helicopters are as safe a form of transport as you can get anywhere in the world, but they hadn't appreciated that things go wrong.
Men employed in the Brent oil field can look forward to a shorter journey to work. The time for the 300 miles from Aberdeen should be halved by some new helicopters being bought by British Airways. The Boeing Vertol is a bigger version of the Chinook military helicopter used by the American Army during the Vietnam War.
I always wanted to fly. Even when I was a kid, I wanted to fly, but of course I didn't tell anybody about it. It's only when I was finishing school and applying for National Defense Academy, and that's when I put down Air Force, and always wanted to fly,
As Joey ga blianach in a chushachet an an fiachgar na hishanach agus a visa san sa le Pakistan, gloish push beveid go Aberdeen, for an recruye make British Airways a pilot and helicopter le h-Olas.
Volunteered to go on to the Chinooks. And that's the best helicopter. I've flown helicopters for 44 years, and that is the best helicopter I've flown in my life.
Each helicopter can carry 44 people, and they may eventually link major European cities.
In the beginning, we used to just go in a normal tie and suit and a proper uniform with 4 jackets and everything. Looking back, it was absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. We never even thought anything going to go wrong. It was like a normal airliner, just go from A to B, do your business and come back,
Ach yn gia lodge having an an kia gia kochit sa shia, agus at the Gulein loch gobrach var run Brent is sombra an the Shelton, chai cushion car.
We started hearing this noise. It seemed to be getting louder. Cabin attendant had come in and he opened the door and he told us, thumbs up, passengers are all ready, because he checked their seat belts and everything. And then he heard us talking about this noise. Oh, he says the noise is coming from here. It's just above his head. The gearbox was just above his head. As soon as he opened the cabin door to go back to sit down, I don't think he had time to sit down. So the helicopter going along like this suddenly did this. And I'm looking up vertically as like a fighter. I'm going to go vertically up. And then we hit the water, and I calculated we hit the water at about 100 miles an hour. It just kept going down and down and down and down. How I came out of it, I have no idea. I just came out. I didn't struggle. And I reached the surface and the wreckage everywhere.
Gevorstanach va helicopter chisaking namara id ecker sich traini in trupastechkin, agus va dekken larach to the steammanagin, with a heen agus ferille as lembeher.
The helicopter came, I waved to them, they put the winch down, the winchman came down, he put a strap around me, winched me up, put me in the helicopter. And I asked the guy, any more survivors? He says, no, just the 2 of you. I was just so shocked. I was really, really shocked.
Van boxe gear it faalige, a torste na spúdan bólang na chéile. Idir an lochsúil agus clúa chail cead sa cógneach an bethe.
I lost a classmate on the Chinook from RGIT.
Cha an Chinook go horsteach a opwyd hívolta agus chun an láinjú sé túpas tealtain an túpas helicopter is smisa a hachid san dúhol.
Majority of those people were far, far younger than me and maybe much fitter than me as well, you know. I just couldn't get my head around that. Why didn't the rest of the people come on?
Ach sa nuchuid an an nuci a diag hochgad sa hoch ag túpa stil am a bhatíadach uabasach. Spadá an Crownola Piper Alpha ciad agus 4,000 gutúa iad Aberdeen.
We were just getting ready to climb down the rope when we got hit by this ball of flame. And I mean, it was just a matter of staying there and cooking or jumping over the side.
Chail ciad sisgad sa seachneach an bethe an loiche sin.
I was at the airport going away. I was probably going to London when I picked up a news comment about a major fire in the North Sea. Thank God I didn't go on the plane because I came back in right away and found out it was Piper Alpha, which is one of our main ones. It was devastating. Horrible.
Ha cynachan idd yn loiche gwlich sin na le an na garag nhw'n rosan an na parke Hazelhead yn Aberdeen.
A fwr dynnu hiw na chanchu cwtigin ag o'r carstyn haid y behed.
It affected so many people, and it still does.
Mar húr spást fialapost, mal na mare stúre, y fwydorn y stúre hatúman gaachach.
Piper Alpha changed my life. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I eventually became offshore installation manager, and it influences your thinking.
Attention please, all personnel from muster stations please.
The weekly safety drill has taken on a new meaning on Shell's Brent Charlie platform, 200 miles north from the wreck of Piper Alpha. It's brought home to everyone here just how dangerous this environment can be.
When you're working in high hazardous industries, you need to remember about the consequences of when you get it wrong. It influences the way that you go about your daily business when you're out there. And so it should. You know, so it should.
Príomh gníomhachas Aberdeen iad hyn go ide agus van y laichen niochentach siachad. Ach va Aberdeen I gaharge cwtioch, ben ha middaganich bevo a hannig ysjach yn dosiach. Ach leis gan rha mwynjil yn naatje heen in y skillenach ge lissachig, heel moren yw gachi.
We had our American school, we still have the American school, but they were never really integrated with the communities.
The curriculum that we used had to be American because these children were on the move.
I mean, we had a Dutch school and a French school as well, but they were kept in their own units within the school. You don't integrate if you're sitting in pockets of, your own little cultures.
Ganyan ima tocolach cultural legend de clwch agus yn galeri ialainis olhain va kunderstang is ska kwach gnevachish gan ra operain kaulamach i'r cwsian cultural.
So I always like to tell this anecdote about Jimmy the mechanic, who's done his apprenticeship, worked in a garage doing MOTs, and then he was recruited to the oil and gas industry fixing diesel engines for cranes offshore, right? And that's, for him, a big jump in terms of income, right? So that's social mobility. Now, but there's no incentive, there's no reason why Jimmy should start going to the theatre or to start reading more books or be interested in culture.
1,100 performers from the four corners of the world have arrived in the city, which for
Gutrich kai urbanian of gus cultur orstistach gan a Baile.
We ran things like the International Youth Festival. We had over 500 participants from the arts sector, whether it's dancing, music, everything. And they came to Aberdeen every year, and that brought a big buzz to the city and a difference. Now, a lot of the oil companies would put money into that. Not huge sums of money when it's an oil company. The City Council always was the major donator.
Now, there's been attempts in the past to bring more culture to Aberdeen, but I would say that they're largely unsuccessful. And if you look at the legacy of oil and gas in terms of cultural capital of the city, it's not really much.
As Joey tríd blianas a Shia, hannig iagan inis oigreator náisianta go crí.
The council withdrew its funding, and that was the end of it.
It's maybe just that northeast personality, and maybe I'm feeling slightly bruised, but people head off to Edinburgh or London for culture, because they've always done that. Everything seems shinier south of Portlethen.
Ach van Baile a gaharge gemoor. Van moor an va hal hadis a chinig op orain, gaan al aan de waan a goped, ach schon een dagje jenne van se Baile heen.
Es war vielleicht barak gegangen, die se doen je le kind je reality, doen je als China, als je als Afrika, als nog wat je zijn, dus nog al vechten nee, die kosje se draait.
I came here in 2003. Just a small congregation there, 6 people the first service, 3 kids and 3 adults.
And because we live, we now live also. And the whole world has changed.
I remember when we first came in, when you go on the streets, if you see an African-looking person on the street, you almost want to go across.
Noorsen ha een nade slooi Nigeria nach am Loperain, het faas gaan niede is smaal per capita zijn roeig gönigje. An Hollaien iddi vi cria yn math seo, agus at anigtje y fjögen tughul is an sara olum an y roi'n chomai, yn gneafachas is cwtrymiche an y Nigeria.
Nigerian has actually brought in over £500 million into the city, with international school fees, which they paid to the university.
Agus an y Nigeria nich is an vi mar farst yn choersnach.
Also now, over time, when I have a multicultural congregation, I have lots of Aberdonians.
It's unique that Aberdonians would accept us. I've walked all over the world for oil companies, and the reception here, you don't find it anywhere else.
And as you may know, the real name of Aberdeen is Aberdeen.
Lennig sylwchus o brain tron yn Ionian.
We managed to grow a business with 53,000 people in 42 countries around the world. That was quite an achievement.
Get nach na tokelich in glensach samel Dubai no Abu Dhabi an op Rhein. Waar loch na $1 billion het Altron Baile. Get nach de göndige hulletinjedischen routen in de gasken nog kopraholle in Gaelic.
Money goes hand in hand with an affection for bloated 4x4 vehicles. No doubt these inadequates feel an obligation to guzzle their own gas. Aberdeen has more personalised, or as Cecil Parkinson called them, cherished number plates than anywhere else in Britain.
Had ook een kleine innovation dat Davile se schach kusboy op Rhein. Ach ren je skus voor de economy de hlappe, ugus en roiach gonigtje.
The crash the rest of the country experienced through 2007 didn't happen in Aberdeen, so it felt like we were, this economy was invincible.
Ach an mean en darne jichit janune lien hadichit vig een doel aan smalle ek op Rhein de heen. Ugus je doel aan haun haast a machten hun landju. Le Shaun Marvage het ook al gaun.
300 jobs go at BP in Aberdeen. There are warnings there's worse to come.
Va prisionolle het tuchtjem gemoord. Rot de goes geen te woorden in een kleine moord triet bliander onneshem.
Horrendous. You know, all you've got to do is look at the amount of people that have been laid off and going to be getting laid off. You know, it's running at thousands.
We could easily lose 80 to 100,000 jobs in the next 2 to 3 years.
Ach, it's on op Rhein, waar schokken naar het pledge leeg. Lees een taal de gunje, waar kammer in het leer, een schidedi, is pandemic, woel en deugel geleer. Hoe kan boy leeg is straatje op Rhein, en waar hoor ik hem geloof voor.
Just recently, I had 2 Norwegian ladies come into the rendezvous gallery, and their question, as they walked through my door, what has happened to Aberdeen? I feel for Aberdeen. I feel very disappointed the way the city looks right now.
Er is ook geen binnen Union Street. Hij doet het toch naar vazig. Er is Tchaikovsky's aan de hand. Er is toch een de boedje around val af. Er is fused in de boedje moeder van. Had de val af goed.
I honestly still have a significant concern that, and I hope this doesn't happen, that the next generation 2 after me, is going to look back on my generation and say, well, you had it all, a great time when you left, what have you left us?
You look at the Dubais, you look at the Abu Dhabis, and I believe they've extracted more oil from the North Sea than those countries, you know. So I expect to see the same level.
I'm pretty convinced that if my equivalent, if there is one, was to walk up and down Union Street for an afternoon, even if the sun was shining, and even if the seagulls could be heard, I don't think they would fall in love with it the way that I did. I think Aberdeen looks pretty run down. Now, to be fair, so do a lot of other city centres. But what is peculiar to Aberdeen, I think, certainly in a Scottish context, is that this enormous amount of money has gone through the place for the better part of half a century, and there's nothing to show for it. The place isn't nearly so attractive looking as it was when I came here as a student in the 1960s.
En toen was de gunje is 3 in een Baile aankan. Het ook al geest mu op Rijn maar 4 welle alle naar een Europa.
It wasn't really the oil capital of Europe. It was a forward base for a set of multinational corporations that were headquartered far away and controlled from far away. And Aberdeen really had no serious jurisdiction over all of that.
When it's all over, they'll disappear, leaving few physical traces and none of any architectural note. The best one can hope for is that the redundant kit turns to photogenic rust.
The one thing that would have had to change is that there had to be a recognition by national governments, and it's true even of the Scottish government, that you have to fund a successful city like Aberdeen if it's going to keep the rest of the economy vibrant. I mean, we're always fighting against the wind. There's no lasting memory that we had oil in the city here. Nothing at all.
Charwachtíadach mac in hanna de jachas a réis agus sin gas sola. Ochgar cúsin cús erist gain sean cús roata. Gus gan je tukas op die gail lehet Aberdeen mag na mejakse kan je. Ach kan je kalma we kwant dat cool en de pleodigin sin falla agus ammonia agus sin falla agus féim sin de hunne sin kwant dat aus den keint jo stort na sin in ver gedíist.
Agus colach gur sin gadíide bheit ha op Rijn je fiachin dhéanamh. Go dtí an lisachú callach seo a luach céad chiad muile náit, fáilte it bátach in cóst mara móra a gacheal. Sgútú seo aharachú mór a thoiste gníomhachas turasach go bhaile.
We need to not say, oh no, we can't do that because that mightn't look good, or people don't want that, or we just want to stay the way we are. We've got to take bold steps.
Ha mollion uur aan en draai je lissachig. We stadium uur club bal kosje a vale na loib. En je sjo stoche gilip sadavaches en olla.
What we must do is get the new industries up and running. That's a really important thing we have to do. And food, drink and agriculture, life sciences, tourism.
Agus maar ha ik in konne ille torspooi in een teugel, stoche kem voet op een Rijn wie trorig u natuge a diest. Agus een gloset go koach a noagachal a stude.
I'd like to think that we're once again doing what we did for the region back in the 1960s when we got oil and gas going.
In the sea off Aberdeen, 11 of the world's most powerful wind turbines.
And there's something about this town, though we've gone through 5 or 6 deeps in the oil industry, it always finds its way back.
I, by nature, am glass half full. If anyone wanted to knock this city, surely it should be myself, after 30 years in policing and seeing human failing. But I don't. I remain very positive about Aberdeen because I know there's a spirit here.
What I love about Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire is the space, the unique mix of people from all over the world, but equally that strong sense of heritage and history that comes from being a city born out of fishing, born out of granite. A city that has reinvented over centuries.
We've still got all these beautiful granite buildings, a lovely beachfront. All of those things are great selling points.
Aberdeen's one of the nicest cities in the UK to live in. It's a really nice city to live in.
Just build the city into something that's worth seeing.
And it's slowly but surely happening.